Welcome everybody, Alberg here without Lola, and this is the Doggy Style Podcast, episode 26. It's about 5 p.m. on a Thursday. Happy Friday Eve to everybody. And it's a kind of a cool day. It rained this morning, so I'm walking today because I'm doing a special walk in a podcast because I'm a little bit behind my weight goal. And the rule I have is if I'm behind my goal, I have to add a 1 hour walk. I paused a little bit because there was a creepy looking bum. Oy. Oops, sorry. Creepy looking bum doing something weird. So my walk is from Midtown down the High Line and then back up to um, Penn Station. And I'm passing a velvet rope right now. A place called the Skylark I'm going to say I'm on 37th Street, I think. So let's see, today at work, I had a lot of computer problems. For some reason, Excel wasn't working right. Took forever to delete stuff. Then it just kept blowing up. So I had a lot of problems. And then at the end of the day, I discovered the source of the problems. My 3 megabyte spreadsheet was 175 megabytes. So that was now how that happened, I don't know. But after just deleting a few sheets, saving it, it went back down to 3 megabytes. So there's always unexpected things that come up at work. There's some character here. I need to take pictures. Okay, I got it, but it's going to probably be blurry because I was a little afraid to take a picture. Characters in New York City. So yeah, so it was a little slow. Today I had a deadline to get out some stuff, some reports, but I didn't make it. I still have tomorrow, and the final deadline is going to be on Monday. I have a monthly deadline of the 21st, and it can be stressful. It looks like some people who send me slides aren't going to make it today, and so it's just the way it is. So again today, not the end of the world, but I have two coworkers who speak in Russian to each other in front of me, and I do find it annoying. So as I hit 9th Avenue, so I wrote down that there was a couple times I got a little pissed off today, and I wrote down that a slow database plus errors plus a deadline plus bugs, and I SFA, and that just means so effing annoyed. So it's just a day, but I always have to remember that this annoyance pays the bills, and it's my PIM, place I make money. So you can't really complain that someone's going to pay you to do these kind of things. I'm passing a Two Brothers Pizza that I've never seen before on 38th and 8th Avenue. And today I was talking to a coworker about how people we two things. People we interact with, there's a certain process we have with them. And if we change a little bit, it causes an it causes an upset in the force or whatever, and people want to bring you back. They don't want you to change because they know how to deal with you as you are, but as you might be, or any changes you make could be frustrating or just not something somebody would like. So if you don't like what's happening, say at work, and I challenge my boss, well, since he's my boss, he might he could always fire me. So I'm not the kind of person who's going to likely put up a big stink. I think you're much better off, and I learned a long time ago, to adjust to your boss. Your boss shouldn't be adjusting to you. Your boss is your customer, and you do serve him or her. And if your boss says jump, you should be saying how high. If your boss, it reminds me of the Stu Leonard's rule of dealing with customers, and applies to bosses. And Stu Leonard's is a grocery store that has a stone outside, and you can look up the stone, do search on Stu Leonard's stone, and the stone, engraved in the stone, it has two rules. The first rule says, rule number one, the customer is always right. And then on the stone it says, rule number two, if the customer is ever wrong, reread rule number one. And I saw that, it hit me in a way that just made a lot of sense. If you treat your customers like that, you're going to have a great business. So if Stu Leonard's was public, I think I would buy this stock. Maybe not. But I'm not giving advice, investment advice. So we also were talking about what I call hired versus acquired. If you're hired by a boss, you're in a much better position than if you're acquired by a boss. So being hired means you went on an interview, the interviewee liked you, made you an offer, and you work for them. Being acquired means you're at a job, your boss leaves or gets laid off, whatever, or you get moved and you have a new boss. So in that second scenario is not as good as the first scenario. When you're hired, your boss has a commitment to you. They actually picked you. They made you an offer. They just against their judgment, they don't want to feel like they hired the wrong person. So they will always have a tendency to like you better than somebody who didn't hire you and acquired you. It's just not something to think about when you do get acquired. And there's a couple of difficulties that go with this. If you get a new job and you get hired, usually you're on your best behavior, you're at a new location. Everything about the new job is treated differently. Whereas when you're acquired, you might be in the same location, you might have the same bad habits, and the new boss will see those. So just something to think about. I have a couple of chapters in my book on it. So I was in an SFA mode today. It stands for so effing annoying. I apologize if I'm being a little negative today, but it's my podcast, not yours. So one thing that annoys me is that at work we have to track our time, and I just find that pretty annoying. I don't know more that I could say about that. That everything I do has to be assigned to some specific project, and it feels like not important. Just it's a bad way. to treat employees, but a good way to manage them. And of course, everybody who's being tracked is always going to game your system for what you're trying to track. You're not necessarily going to get the true hours on how they spend the time. So for example, if I work overtime, in the past I would log it thinking that, oh, they'll like that I worked overtime. But it actually backfired because it showed that I spent a certain number of hours working on something, and they assign a cost to that. They don't assign a lower cost. So an hour might be X dollars or effort or whatever, and I could be judged negatively for working a lot of hours on a report. So something to keep in mind. Yeah, so one of the things that I was having a problem with was I was deleting filtered cells in an Excel spreadsheet. Now, to some of you that must sound very boring, and it was just taking forever. And again, it looks like the whole reason I was having a problem with it was that my spreadsheet was 175 megabytes, which is very big. So I was having a problem today and spent most of the day trying to solve this problem, and I'll call it the double counting problem. So I was creating what's called a view in SQL language. We have a table structure that's very hard to retrieve things. It's complex, doesn't make sense. So I was doing what's called creating a view, which is just a much simpler way. So instead of saying it's like instead of saying a very long statement, you would just say one word and it would have the same kind of meaning. But anyway, so I spent a lot of time. The query was counting things twice, and it just took me a very long time to figure out what was causing it. And I'm going to pause right now for a second and take a picture of the new construction. As I see 4 buildings right in my viewpoint that are going up. And we're on 10th Avenue and 35th Street. Yeah, so hopefully my batteries will be good and I'll be able to take some pictures and post them. I'm sure it'll make the podcast more interesting. I'm passing a place called Friedman's right now, and it looks like it would be interesting to go in and get a drink. But since I'm dieting right now, and really can't get a drink, so well, I won't. But maybe one day I will walk by it and do that. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of more construction starting. There's another building to my right. There's right in front of me, they're building something. Boy, this 10th Avenue is really, there's another one. It's happening on 10th Avenue. Could use some more restaurants or things to do. I don't know if there's a movie theater near here or other stuff. There's a place called Rocky's Bar and Restaurant on 34th between 9th and 10th. Yeah, so the problem I had was double counting, and this will be a little technical, and there's another building coming up. But just, it's really for my own purposes. You can skip this if you don't want to hear it. But basically, we have 2 ways of identifying a customer. And we're doing a join of 3 different tables and accessing the data by one key to the customer was just pulling up a duplicate record, and I figured out how to solve it eventually. But it was really frustrating, and it took a really long time. But that's a very common problem with writing what's called SQL. There's 2 problems. One is double counting, where you count a record twice. And the other problem is dropping records. So each of those can happen. Okay, so also, wow. A nice park over here with benches and a subway station. Huh. They opened a new subway station, I guess, on 10th Avenue, so you can get here by subway now. Pretty interesting. It's called 34th Street Hudson Yards subway. I can't get a picture of it, maybe. I'll try. Yeah, they are building here. It's a cute little park. I get this feeling I'm walking into a dead end, though, and I think I am. Oh, I got to backtrack. Yeah, nowhere to go. But there's something weird. There's a weird looking contraption. Okay, this is bad because I'm trying to make a certain train, and I'm certainly off my schedule. But I'll take a picture of this thing, whatever it possibly is. No idea. There is an elevator here, and we have to get out of this park. Well, we don't have to, I do. So another thing I thought about was we're really big, and I talked about this yesterday, diversity and inclusion in my company. So I said something to one of the guys. I said something, we should be into homogeneity and exclusion. Homogeneity means same. And he thought that was pretty funny. And another complaint I have is there's a lot of people who are what is called a director in my company, and some of them could barely speak English. It kind of angers me a little bit. Like, why aren't I a director? And that would be one of my goals. The problem I'm going to have is it seems like they're trying to clamp down on white males becoming directors. That's kind of what I heard. They want to make more women to that position. Yeah, so it sounds a little, I mean, it is sexist, very sexist. I feel like I'm qualified, yet because of my sex, I can't get a position. I don't know if that's true. Yeah, we're not going to make we're like, you're coming with me. I'm not going to make my train tonight. That's okay. I think there's a way, yes. So I'm going to walk the long part of the High Line, which I'm on 34th walking between 11th and 12th, and I should be on the High Line pretty soon. Oh, and another thing, this is a very common problem with Excel that I run into a lot is I did something in Excel and it didn't work the way I thought. And right away I realized that calculations must be turned off. And so in Excel, there's a way of turning off and on calculations, and I'm not sure why this was happening. Maybe somebody's spreadsheet had this as a default. But in any case, I figured it out very quickly. So if a spreadsheet you have isn't working the way you expect it to, it could be this calculations issue. And just the last two things is somebody last month's PowerPoint deck told me they wanted to update what's called limits. And so I needed a way to remind myself to do it this month. And so I put an alarm in success alarm, and I know I have to do it. But it's interesting that this is a alarm based on a task. As I enter the high line, there's no sign here. Oh wait, there is a sign here. For the high line. And then the last thing, I had a list of my messy desk. I cleaned it a little bit today, but one of the things that Jordan Peterson says, he's a new up-and-coming guy. If you look him up on Google, he's got really good content. Is that if you can't be successful with a simple thing, how could you be successful with the hard things? So I believe his suggestion is get in control of the little things. So a messy desk is really a very simple thing, and if I can't have a clean desk, how can I do other stuff? I just thought that was interesting. So a lot of new buildings, as I said. I'm by the, it looks like Metro North or Long Island Railroad yards. There's a lot of trains, yeah. So look, I'm not sure what they do here, but I can see tracks numbered from 30 down to 1. Okay, so I'm gonna, for the rest of the, I'll go through some of my earlier lists right now to see what I got there. I haven't been, and I started to do this. And some of these will just be meaningless to me because I probably wrote them down many months ago. You know, I read some of them and it's pretty interesting. So I scrolled down this 1,000-item list. I pressed something by accident, and now I have to scroll down it again. It's okay. So I can see the West Side Highway. It's a lot of traffic, and I'll probably have to do this again. Let's see. I saw the first person wearing a graduation suit, gown. So it is May, and I guess kids are graduating from school probably uh, here. I'm not sure what school. Yeah, so I got a lot of stuff here, and I'm gonna miss my train, which is okay. I'll just make the next one. And I'll just go through some of these items. I won't know anything about some of them, but I'll try and add some notes. Notes to the show. Okay, so this looks familiar. Um, so I've written down dollar pizza shops, and it says 38th and 6th Avenue, 39th. I have a goal of decluttering, workout habit. Yes, that's been a tough one for me. The working out 3 days a week was pretty simple, but I've yet to find a way to implement it. Matter of fact, yesterday turned out to be a interesting day. So I went to the gym. So I actually decided to walk the dog first, went to the gym, and this is like the third time in a row. So it seems like on Mondays something's happening where it's hard to get a spot. So we must have went around in circles a few times, and then finally I decided to went into a health food store, bought some stuff, and some of it had to be kept frozen. So when I came out of there, a spot was kind of opening, but I really we just decided to go home. One of my rules is that I have to drive to the gym. I don't have to go. So I mean, just getting in the habit of getting dressed and driving is not a bad idea. And if I could do that 3 days a week, I would be happy. It might even be better than the actual exercise. And in actuality, once I got to the gym, most likely I would work out. It just so happened a couple of times I wasn't able to. Uh, so another thing that I'd like to get done this year is to really organize my garage better. And again, this gets into the small tasks. If I can't get my garage done, how could I possibly do a more complicated thing? And that's been a task for many years. So it would be good to be able to finally get that done. But the garage is funny because once you clean it, it's very easy to accumulate more stuff. Just a general declutter goal. So I don't know if anybody else has problems with clutter. I definitely have some problems. And I do need to push it up in terms of priority. Maybe reminders, I could put an alarm. I could again. So what kind of alarm would I do? I'd probably just want to have a daily alarm that said declutter. And it could be random between the hours of 7 to 12, so 5 hours. I get a random alarm to declutter, and I'll spend a few minutes, at least one, trying to declutter or throw something out. So I have a idea to write down a blog on how to find data connection issues. I wrote that so long ago. I haven't had one in a while, but you can get what's called data connection issues. Excel's able to connect to a database and download that data into a spreadsheet, which is pretty cool. Next one is reflect on your life. Interesting. That's a tough one. I don't know if I'm ready to reflect, but I guess I could try. So the first thing that comes up when I think about reflecting is um, how fast life goes by. I mean, it's so extremely fast that I mean, I'm 58 years old, and I feel younger. My kids are grown, both in college right now, and it just whizzes by. So if I could give you one piece of advice, enjoy life, enjoy the things you have today, because it will go by fast. I mean, in a blur, it's a blur if I think about it. So what else? My parents have passed away, so I guess I miss them. And I was just going to say they were parents. I hope I'm not like this, but I always found my parents a little annoying. You know, parents are always telling you what to do, and and as I got older, they were very stubborn. I mean, I guess my mother wasn't, but my dad, who lived, I think, 8 years longer, was pretty stubborn. But I love them both, and I miss them. Um, I don't know that I would change anything if I could. I mean, one mistake I think I made is I got married at too young of an age. My first marriage, which I was married at 24 and divorced at 29. Um, I guess another thing would be more outgoing. Um, don't get stuck doing one thing. You know, don't get stuck with either a person or a job. I mean, this current job, I've been there for 10 years. I feel a little stuck there. Um, one of the things one of the guys was saying to me at work was how he's my age, and he was saying how it's been on hundreds of interviews, and you can't, you know, he's got very close, but they've said no at the end. And one of the things I was thinking is it reminded me of my parking spot analogy, which I have to add something to my book. And I've always said, I don't know where I got this from, is that finding a job is like finding a parking spot. If you believe there's no parking spots, you won't find one. But if you think there's a parking spot, you not only do you have a chance, you'll probably find one. I mean, I don't know if that's great wisdom, but it is true. When you're looking for something, when you focus on it and think about it and think you can, it becomes much easier. So if I really wanted a job, I would just focus on getting a job and believe I could get a new job. Uh, his own experience was that he was having trouble getting an internal job for whatever reason. You know, it could be that he didn't get a good recommendation. Uh, he's the only thing I would say about him is he's got his posture's bad, so he doesn't look young. He has gray hair, and he also has a little shaking going on with his hand. So I don't know if that's why. Could be his salary's too high also. So it could be a lot of reasons. Okay, what else can I reflect on? So I could talk a little bit about being a child. So I grew up in the Bronx. I have a twin brother, not identical, fraternal. And I remember playing a lot as a kid, playing a lot of games, having fun. We used to play, I remember playing Army, where we would pick up a stick. And of course, this is before the internet, before video games and things like that. So I think people and kids have lost something. And the way parents, I see parents don't want to be bothered. So they give the kid a iPad, and the child is just or some video game, and all they can do is play, play, play. So I don't think it's raising what's going to be good adults. I remember when I was a kid, I used to love Superman, the TV show, the original TV show. And when we got a new TV, I remember worrying that that the TV wouldn't have Superman on it. So I had no idea that the TV waves were coming through the air. I mean, it was before cable, so you had a TV antenna on your roof, and that picked up the wave of the TV wave. Yes, it's tough. It's really tough to reflect. Um, I probably should have some questions, so I'm going to see if I could make up some questions right now to ask myself, and then I'll try maybe in a future podcast. And again, I said maybe, which means I probably won't. In a future podcast, to ask myself these questions. So, um, tell me about your life. What was it like? What was it like growing up? Do you have brothers and sisters? You know, I do have brothers. I have three brothers and two sisters. So I'm from a family of six kids. As I'm looking at somebody on their terrace, smoking a cigarette and facing away from the High Line. What is your favorite memory as a child? What one event is very memorable to you? So one event that's very memorable to me is that the kids were young. I don't know remember how old. And it was maybe in my neighborhood, there were probably 20, 30 kids that would hang out and play together. And one day we were playing a game called Spud, where I forget exactly how the game is played, but if I think somebody tossed the ball up and somebody got it, or he called somebody's name, and then you had to throw a ball and hit them with it somehow. I'll try to point to the rules on the internet on Wikipedia. And so I lost the game. You get a letter each time you do some mistake, and I spelled out Spud, and I thought they cheated against me. I didn't think I had the whole thing, and there was this kid. His name was Robert DeVecchio, who later became a famous rodeo star. Really tough kid, which is kind of funny. And he kind of forced me and made me cry. I remember he forced me to do something, or he actually, oh right, he crushed a tomato on my head, and he asked everybody thumbs up or thumbs down, and the kids said thumbs down. Another thing that I'm just recalling is that I a lot of times, I guess we hung up with older kids. It sounds plausible. And when they would choose up sides, a lot of times I would be left out. So there would be, if there was an odd number of kids, everybody would pick, and I would be picked less. I was not a great athlete. Um, what were some of your favorite hobbies? So I love to ride a bicycle. When I was little, I had this brown tricycle, and I don't know how old I was when I had it. And I used to just love to ride it around the block. It was big. It wasn't it actually had a chain. So it was a tricycle with a chain, but it wasn't for an old person. It was for a kid. And you don't even see this type of bike anymore. But I do remember really liking it. We used to play a game called Scully, which I'll put a link to this, which is a board with numbers 1 to 13, and you had to shoot bottle caps. It seemed like a long game, and all these things you would do, you'd fill a bottle cap up with wax, and the wax was crayon. You melt the crayon, or you would scrape a bottle on a sewer, and the very tip of the bottle would create a circle, and it would be your Scully cap. Yeah, a lot of games used to play. Wiffle ball, punch ball, um, something called Ringalivio. I had an enjoyable childhood. Um, and I always had a thing for hockey and roller skating. I like to roller skate also. And in that time, we had metal roller skates and a skate key. A lot of people stopping to take a picture of the Empire State Building, and why not? I'll do it too. Any lessons? Did you learn any lessons as a child? I remember I had an older brother. Still have him, but he was kind of mean. He used to almost toss. My dad used to hit us with a belt and a shoe. Kind of unacceptable now. And I don't remember doing anything. Maybe making noise. It's pretty odd. So who knows how that affected me? Um, and my mother would hit us too sometimes. And we didn't really have much with, for the most part. This is interesting that my dad worked at a camera store, pretty big camera store in New York City called Willoughby's. And, he couldn't make a lot of money, and my mother didn't even work. So it was a time where you could survive on one salary. I mean, we didn't have a lot of money, and neither of them were college graduates. I just had a memory of we, as little kids, and again, I don't know how old, I'm going to say somewhere, I'll say around 8 to 10, we would walk pretty far away from my house. And I'll measure it out on the map just to show you. We'd walk pretty far away from the house, and we'd go to the Fordham Road train station, Metro North Station, and play on the train tracks. And the big goal was to put a coin on a track, and then a train would run it over, and it would turn into a pancake. And I think one time, pretty dangerous for a little kid. I feel like my parents didn't do much of the raising, that my older brothers and sisters did more of the work. Teaching us stuff, maybe learning from friends. A lot of kids in my neighborhood. It was a lot of fun. So any lessons that you learned growing up in the Bronx? I would say that it probably made me a little bit more street smart. Um, just had a thought of a time when I was a little older and I was going to Lehman College and playing for the ice hockey team there. And it was a snowstorm and I couldn't get home from the rink. So I wound up taking a subway, and it was a very long subway ride. I had to go from the Bronx into Manhattan and then across and then into the city, I think, and then back up the Bronx. And I'll try and outline the route I took on a snowy day, and then walk a pretty long time with hockey equipment. And so while I was traveling, I entered into an elevator, and some Hispanic kids got in the elevator with me, and one of the kids pulled out a switchblade, and I'm going to say it was a foot long, where he got it from, and he was kind of doing something with the elevator buttons. And the kids were asking me, where you from, where you going, what's going on. And I told them I lived in Co-op City. And they said, oh, do you know a guy named Eddie Solano? And sure enough, I knew Eddie. Funny enough, he used to ride bikes, and that was a thing we did a lot. It was a lot of bike riding, but I haven't done it in a while. I think I need to get a new bike. I have a pretty old old bike that's a little too big for me. But I did like bike riding, and I think I should start doing it some more. I think it's really hard to find the time, and with the dog, I have a dog, so it would be hard. So a lot of little places to eat here. I'm just walking under a place that has little food courts. Mhm. There's a nice, cool fountain over here. I'll get a picture of that. You won't be able to see the moving water. If you could do anything over again, what would you do? Hmm. I guess as a child, I try to be a little bit more outgoing and not be afraid of either talking to strangers or. Sorry. Okay, I'm getting pretty close to the exit. Okay, I'm going to turn down here. You know something? I'm late anyway, so I'll walk a little bit more. And maybe one of these days I'll walk with somebody from work and have a beer at the beer garden. So something's going out here. Seems like somebody's practicing for a show tonight. Um, Ayesha Jordan. Yeah, so what was your relationship with your parents? Um, my dad taught me a lot about fixing things. He was pretty handy. Um, I do miss him. And my mother was always cooking. She used to make something called a masadiku, which I tried to buy the other day, but it was supposed to be frozen. I put it in the fridge and I couldn't eat it. So that was another strike yesterday. So that was two strikes. One was the one strike was the gym not having a parking. The second was the food I bought, and then I went for pizza, and they didn't have the pizza I wanted. You know, first world problems. What were you good at as a kid? Um, when I wasn't that old, I bought a bike. Well, first of all, yeah, I was into business. I used to have a paper route. I used to deliver the New York Post. And I remember it was $1.35, where the real cost was $1.50. And some people wouldn't even would give you that, not a tip. I couldn't give you the extra 15 cents. And some people give a nice tip. So I guess I learned a little bit about business from that. Um, what was the school? What were you like in school? I would say in school I was one of the smarter kids. I mean, I skipped 8th grade. But I always felt like I didn't have a great memory, and I still to this day don't feel like my memory is as good as I'd like it to be. It reminds me of a story when I was in the fifth grade. I won my class spelling bee, and I was, so after the class spelling bee, they had oh, there's a bathroom here. So after the class spelling bee, they had um, I'm going to pause this for a second. And then we had the class spelling bee. We had the class against all the classes, the school spelling bee. And I was up on stage in the auditorium, and the first word came up was often. And I spelled it O-F-E-N, often, forgetting the T. I was so embarrassed, and there was a teacher that asked me, "Oh, why did you get that wrong? How could you get that wrong?" And I lied to her and I said to her that I got it wrong because I was too nervous, and I got it wrong on purpose. And she was always very disappointed at me because of that. So I'm at the very end of the High Line. This is it. This is the end. Um, Looks like they're building, a lot of building going on over here. I was just tempted to walk back up the water. Oh, wow. Yeah, so I'm much longer than I could see 52 minutes. Had to make a pit stop and didn't want you to hear that. So I'm right by the beer garden now. It's on Little West 12th and Washington Street, and I would recommend stopping here if you can. It's an interesting place. There's usually a line here, but for some reason I don't see one today. You buy tickets. So it's not that crowded. It's pretty empty today. They have ping pong tables at the beer garden. So if you like ping pong, it's a place to stop by. Yeah, so if there was anything you could do all over again from being a kid, what would you do? No idea. Not sure. I think I would probably want to have a dog if I could do it all over again, though who knows if I'd be good with one. Oh, Tesla. There's a Tesla right here. Tesla dealer. Pretty cool. Um, what kind of things did you like to do as a kid? Yeah, so I mentioned a few of the games we would play. Okay, I think I've said enough for that. I'm gonna turn this back to my book, Key Principles for Success. And I'll pause this. Okay, so I got my key principle list, which I got a random one up. Let's see what it says. So the first thing on my list is idea to money. I to dollar sign, 3 letters. Interesting on how I would like to take an idea I have and find a way to make money off of it. So I seem to have ideas, but none of them are that great. But I could use a little bit more effort in trying to monetize these ideas. And I even have method of creating ideas, which I think is pretty cool, using randomness. And looks like I got not that much, so I could read it. If you have lots of ideas, you need a way to turn it into money. If you're not good at coming up with ideas, then you probably haven't exercised your idea muscle. This is a term that James Altucher popularized. Basically, you try to come up with 10 ideas every day. The more you practice, the better you get. If you don't practice, your ability to create ideas will atrophy like a muscle. As I'm on 14th Street in Hudson, right by the Apple Store. Track all ideas you have, take one of them with the highest odds of success and invest $100 in determining if it's good. If you don't want to spend $100, then come up with more ideas until you do. You could also focus on time you spend. Try to get feedback as soon as possible. So I'm basically saying if you have ideas, you have to spend some money to see if it's viable. How would you know? And $100 seems like a good investment. It would be great if you could spend 100 and get that 100 back. And it would be all learning, or even better, spend 100 and make a profit on it. So it's a very good suggestion. I will add it to my things to do as a goal to spend $100. Matter of fact, I'm going to enter it right now. So my goal is to spend $100 on one of my ideas. So one of the pizza shops I like is here. It's called Rocky's. It's pizza on 14th Street, 14th and 8th Avenue. It's pretty good. Not cheap. Okay, I'm going to make an illegal cross. Hopefully I won't get killed. And we made it. So I'm on 14th Street, walking up 8th Avenue to Penn Station. I do feel tired. I've been doing this for 58 minutes according to the time on the clock. And I'll just continue going through my key principle list. If I can find it now. So I opened it and it wasn't where I left off, but this principle is called "That's a Great Question." One of the things I noticed when somebody gives a talk and somebody asks an interesting question, they'll say, "That's a good question. That's a great question." And one of the things this does is it's basically a subtle compliment that you're smart and you ask good questions. So if somebody asks you a good question, always say that. It's, I think, a great way of giving somebody a subtle compliment. And I think there's no better compliment than a subtle one. As I could say, "Oh, you're really smart," but no one would say that. But "That's a great question" is subtle enough that it'll make me feel good. So look for ways to say that. So I'll just read it. When being interviewed, you can get more questions from the audience with, quote, "That's a great question," unquote. This is a compliment to the asker and will encourage others to ask questions also. Now, it may be a bad question, but the first person asking a question, by definition, is a great question because it gets the ball rolling. This also works to improve likability as you've given the asker a subtle compliment. Okay, so we'll do random again. Somehow I lost where I was. Oh, it was idea to money, right? Boy, City is really happening right now. A lot of people out. So the next rule is make money. I don't have anything written on it yet, but see what I could say about it. And I have MK dollar sign. So I think when I do something, I should be asking this question. How will I make money from this? Can I make money from this? Because when it comes down to it, I really want to make money. I don't want to do things for free like I am. Jeez. And for me, um, one of the key things I haven't gotten from my side ideas is money for any of them. So the best one I had that I was getting some feedback and some users was the XL diet. So it seems like it would be worth to pursue it in some way. Whew. Yeah, so that's a simple question. How can I, so I can even ask it about this podcast. Now, just making money is not necessarily the goal to everything. You can also learn a skill, and my skill could be public speaking. I might improve my public speaking skills by talking a lot, recording it, organize my thoughts. I could get my thoughts organized better. Shit, I'm running to make a light again. Ooh, ow, ooh, ow. Whew. So if I'm, there seems to be, they're filming something here. Seems to be filming some sort of movie or something. See what it says. It says marvelous. Yeah, so make money. So to make money, I have to first make something. I do have a number of books. I have a book on Amazon. So just because you made something doesn't mean you're going to make money. You have to be good at marketing or pay somebody to market your stuff. Um, a good product without good marketing is a little bit useless. So that is a key element to making money. Is now you don't have to market it yourself. You can pay somebody to do it, but the problem might be is that it could be very expensive, and your idea, most ideas will not be successful. I mean, we have this feeling that so many ideas are successful, but it would be interesting to talk to people who failed with ideas, and maybe even look at books I have. Like, how successful were the people who even got a book published in a bookstore? How much money did they make off that book? How many people bought that book? Probably very, very few. So like I said, so just making money is not the end all. Improving a skill that can be used, like I said, public speaking. There could be other skills you could make, you can gain from doing things. So for me, this podcast, I'm learning how to speak better, um, learning how to produce videos, how to produce a podcast, and I'm walking anyway. I'm getting exercise, so I might as well try and figure out my thoughts. But I don't have a lot on making money because I haven't done it. And I just think it's hard. So one thing to do is I think my idea is to give stuff, do free things, and then try to have a paid version. And there aren't a lot of people who are making money over the internet, I would guess. I mean, you may think there are, but I'm sure it's few and far between. Oh, so a cute dog. Next one I have is figure it out curiosity, and I do have something there. And it looks like, oh, got some stuff here. And this actually might be a chapter in the book. It's public. So figure it out slash curiosity. When I was younger, I spent time finding things out, figuring. I spent time figuring things out. The first bike I bought was a Ross brand, and I spent about $100 on it. After not too long, the wheel got bent and didn't work properly. Okay, I'm in the street now, so I'm going to pause for a second. So I bought a new rim and tried unsuccessfully to fix the bent rim. Now I knew that the worst that would happen would be I'd fail to fix the wheel, but I could bring it to a bike shop to fix it. Excuse me. To fix. I started a rule that if I couldn't break something that was broken, I wouldn't pay to fix it. I would at least give it a try. Since this time I've taken many things apart and actually have fixed some. I was also curious on how things worked. If you're curious, there's a treasure trove of information available on the internet to keep you busy for a lifetime. So if your bicycle is broken, see if you can figure out what's wrong, as long as you don't damage it anymore. I believe that this skill of figuring things out has been important to my success. I've figured out how to fix bicycles, juggle 3 balls, ride a bicycle backwards, give myself a haircut, use a spreadsheet, fix my broken sink, change the oil in my car, and fix broken computers. I don't know if I'll ever be a person that reads books, a voiceover, okay? But I can listen to this at least and think what's different, and I can listen to existing books on tape I have and see what they're doing. So one of the things I can do if I wanted to improve here, probably won't do it, is to get a book on tape, listen to it, and try to replicate what the author is saying and how they say it with their book.
Well, maybe what we need to do
Mhm. So don't criticize is the next one. And I write down Boris, probably not his real name, criticizes me for not having a shortcut. Yeah, so criticizing people is a no-no. Nobody wants to be criticized. Um, they say you get bees with flies with honey, or I don't know the saying. But anyway, be careful when you criticize people. People won't like you. And this is an example of where somebody did something and I wrote down the rule. And you can do this too. If somebody says something or does something that bothers you, write it down and try to learn not to do that to other people. Because if it bothers you, it'll probably bother other people. This one is from David Rushenko, which I saw he gave a talk at my office. And it motivated me, and for some time I probably should watch it again. I'm going to see if I could find his same talk and post a link. He was the co-founder of a company, I believe it's called Wix, Wix.com, which helps you build websites. So the question is, do people want what I'm making? A very good question. I like that question. Do people? I think I even have a list of his I do. I have a list of his questions on my wall, which I will post also with this podcast. Yeah, so what am I making? I'm making right now a few things. One of the things is I'm trying to make an Excel class. I'm not sure if people want an Excel class. I won't know. How would I know? I could do what's called market then build, where I try and advertise and get a sense of what the demand is. So I'm a little chicken to do that. Interesting. I don't want to spend the money, but I could find out that it would be very hard to have a class, probably with a little effort and some money. So this whole idea of market then build, it could be a good idea, but it's something I haven't done yet. I guess when you market something, you can destroy the dream you have. So the dream I have is that I can make money off of my Excel knowledge. So one thought is, and this is an issue on how I can teach people Excel, and can I do it via um, my computer and a screen projector, where they don't have a computer, they just watch, they ask questions, and they go home and then do it. So that could be one way. The other way they actually do it, I'm not sure. I mean, that has a lot of problems with it, but so and this is a very important thing for me to prioritize. Like, what's the first thing to do here? Is it to market it? Is it to spend $100 on an ad and see if I can get people to do a class? Can I pay somebody to research this information for me? So I think once I do a little bit of this of my own, I think it would be time to pay for research. And it could be on Fiverr, which is a website, FiverR.com, I think. Might be 2 R's. Where you spend $5, and I could put a $5 offer, and somebody could do what I'm asking. Research this. Make a logo for this. So I like that question, and I really have to keep that in mind. So do people like what I'm making? Do people want what I'm making? And how do I find that out? It almost seems like you would have to make it to see if they want it, but the effort to make it is difficult. So this is a catch-22 situation. How do I know if people will want it if I haven't made it? Now, one advantage of doing something like Success Alarm is that even if nobody wants it, at least I've done it for myself, so it fits some of my requirements. So in theory, it should be able to fit other people's requirements. Yeah, really crowded in the city today. And I'm going to end on this podcast now as I enter Penn Station. This is Al Berg without Lola. I hope you all have a great, great day. Um, go for your dream. Life is too short to live and not at least reach for it, whatever that is, whether it's a business, an idea, um, a partner, whatever it is, go for it. You got nothing to lose, because the only thing you'll do is fail and probably learn from it. Anyway, take care.